Hi everyone, this is Tom and with me here is Bloop because today is going to be a special video. We're going to be talking about the LEC Summer Split Awards. But before we get started, a small introduction of both of us. So Bloop, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, perfect. Hey, I'm Bloop. I'm 18 years old, freelance journalist, currently working for Esportmaníacos, leading esports in Spanish media. I started doing LEC content this split, doing some interviews in our YouTube channel, and now we are here discussing about the MVPs. Also, it's the first time I had the chance to vote here, so I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, and before this you focus mainly on the Superliga Orange, right? The Spanish league.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like you're completely new to League of Legends, so it's
No.
you know, we know what we're talking about. As a reminder, like if you're watching it on my channel, you probably know who I am. But I've been an esports journalist for over 5 years now. Made the transition to League of Legends over the course of last year by visiting the Summer Split Finals, the Spring Split Finals, and also a bit of Worlds. And this is my first year as a full-time League of Legends reporter, covering spring and summer. And yeah, very excited to get started. And we also have to go over the LEC Awards. Well, what are they? Basically, at the end of each regular split. So the LEC has 9 weeks competition. In the summer split, it was 8 weeks because they had 2 super weekends. And at the end of that, everybody gets to vote for who they think is the best in each role. That is top lane, jungle, mid, bot lane, and support, but also coach. We have rookie of the split, and we have the MVP of the split. And yeah, the people who can vote are media, so third-party media, everybody who got press credentials, and I think every outlet gets one person to vote, right, Bloop? Or is it?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah. So you were the designated voter on Esportmaníacos side, and then you have each team has one representative in a player, and each team coach can vote, I believe. And then you have people involved with the broadcast. So people like the casters, for example, but I believe other production people who are closely involved with following the LEC can vote as well. And basically, you submit a top 3 for each category. Based on that, the players get points, and whoever gets the most points wins that category in the end. There are a few rules, though, when it comes to voting. For example, if you're affiliated with a team, you cannot vote on anybody on that team. Otherwise, your vote will be calculated as ineligible and will not count towards the eventual progress. So, for example, Grabs cannot vote on anybody from his team and stuff like that. So, yeah, with that said,
I hope we don't have these strategic votes on the teams to
yes, yeah,
to make someone win. This
yeah,
so
exactly.
boring.
Yeah, so that is a possibility, right? That people, for example, let's say somebody on Rogue is scared that Caps will be voted as best mid lane of the split. That person from Rogue could theoretically vote for, I don't know, like Zazie and Special as best mid laner of the split, you know, and that way it will increase the likelihood of Larsen being best mid lane of the split. I give this as an example. I know the people on Rogue and I know them very well, and I know they take these things seriously, but it's just to illustrate the picture. So
Of course,
yeah.
I think Larsen don't need to do that to.
No, exactly. I think he's gonna get plenty of votes without that. And also, I want to say that this video is being published after the LEC MVP has been revealed. This is a request by Riot Games because we are recording this on Monday, the 17th of August. This is before any playoffs matches has been played, so we don't let any of those performances influence our discussion. Again, our votes have already been cast. And Riot just asked, could you wait until publishing this video until after we have revealed all the award winners? Because otherwise, if all people already started revealing their votes, then fans can start compiling lists of who voted where. And that kind of, is detrimental to the hype and deteriorates that a bit, because then you can figure out who is the winner. So let's just get to how we got about determining who we would vote for, like a general methodology we approach. So, Bloop, we have 10 people per category. In the Rookie of the Split, it's a bit less. In other categories, when substitutes came in, it's a bit more. So how did you try to narrow down your nominees?
For me, it's a lot about the importance of a player in the team. I think that's very important, and you guys will see that on my MVP pick, I think. Also, for me, it's important the champion pool and also be a regular player. If you have performance pick with very nice games, and then the next week you have little weak games, for me it's not that valuable. So that's my criteria basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, it was because I've been following this week this LEC obviously very closely, and always doing these recaps and previews. And for me, because I think in a few categories it's especially very close. And
I think so.
So what I did was literally I've written down all the names of all the players on a sheet per category, and the first thing I did was, okay, I'm gonna cross away half of the names first, so I have like a top 5 per category immediately of like people and players, and like, okay, but those I shouldn't even consider, like, those are not within my consideration. And that made it a bit easier to oversee who I could vote for. And from there it was I look, for example, the eye test, like which player looks the most dominant, right? It's just you look at the player and it's like, okay, this player is playing above other people's level in the same role. And then it was also obviously like consistency, like you can be good for 2 weeks in a row. Like for example, if you're extremely good in week 7 and 8, that's what a lot of people are going to remember, right? But I would rather I put people who are like the second best for the entire split. I put them higher than people who are the best mid laner for 2 weeks. It's because then you have somebody who's second place for the entire split has more consistent and is higher up that list for me than somebody who is the best mid laner for maybe 2 weeks and a middle tier mid laner for the rest of the split. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. And also I think people often take more in consideration the last few weeks rather than the first half of the split, and I think it's important to take everything in care to vote. So
yeah, I
try to do that.
Yeah, but I do have to say that if it's ever a tie, when I was like, but these players are just very much on the same, then I will look at the later weeks because those matches matches matter more, and like it's also a test of skill to perform under pressure, so but it's like way down the list of deciding factors for me, the timing in which it is. Okay, so let's just start with let's just go down each lane. We'll start with top, jungle, mid, bot, and then support. Then we go to rookie of the split, coach of the split, and finally MVP of the split. So let's start with the top laner of the split. The eligible nominees in no particular order were Wunder, Whipple, Alfari, Orome, Finn, Denden, Cabochard, Kreis, Genox, and Odoamne. So were there any people you immediately thought of, I'm not gonna consider them? Like, not to go too deep into bashing them or something, but like, but those fell off my list.
I think the top lane level is not that bad. For example, in jungler, I had problems taking 3 good and consistent junglers, but in top lane, I don't think there is anybody that I thought, okay, this is not in consideration for me. Maybe not for the top 3, but I think every top laner had their moment. For example, you can say Jenax maybe is one of the worst top laners. Odoamne, I think, is very good, but had a very bad early split, like the Schalke team basically. But I think every top laner had their moment to shine. I don't think there was any name that fell off immediately from my mind, but of course I think there are some top laners that stepped up a lot. For example, Orome, I think, is the best example. For me, Orome made a big improve from the spring split, but I think the king is still Alfari, which is a strange case because
it's weird, right? It's really
the top
weird.
laner from a 10th team,
from the worst team in the LEC, literally the worst team. So it's interesting to I agree with you that for me, after Alfari, because, well, let's just say it, I voted Alfari as first, and
yeah,
it was
same.
Because like in the laning phase, there's nobody better than him. It's no contest, right? But even then, and that's like, I don't know, like often like 40% of the game, right? It's like you're in the lane trying to make a case, and that's where he was excellent. But then even in team fights, it's hard to quantify what he does, because he didn't get like super many kills or something like that, but the way he put pressure on the enemy teams, the way he positioned himself to create the best possible advantage for Origin in a team fight, I think there's nobody better than him in this split. And even though in the final weeks, sure, he didn't have his best games, right? But for the majority of the split, this guy was he was the best top laner by far. But then, as you said, and I agree with this, then you have this large part of top laners where you can say like, okay, yeah, they all had their own moments, where, for example, yeah, you're right, Orome stepped it up massively, and he had that game on Jax, he had a game on Renekton where he absolutely carried for them at Lions, and other times he was, as the top lane often did this split, was like more of a weak side, it's like not a lot of resources going in there, not a lot of focus there, so they just had to wait and patiently play until later on they could become a meat shield in team fights or something like that, right? So, for me though, like if I crossed off immediately, I think one of the first names I thought I'm not gonna consider him is Bwipo, because because he had like 3 games or something when he like flipped the switch and started carrying really hard. He, like, for the majority of the split was not up to par in any way with what he should have been, and also a huge detriment to Fnatic. Like, he was literally inting. And so it felt difficult to cross him off the list, because we know how good he can be. Also, somebody like Dan I crossed off my list early on. I think he had very little to no impact. Kreis, while I think he has grown a lot, I don't think I would consider him in the top 3 for top lane of the split at all.
Yeah, I think Kreis have a big problem, and I think he doesn't or didn't prove that he can play weak side, and I think all the games was carry. I remember one of the last game, maybe a Ornn or a Sion, something like that in one of the last games. I think the last game for versus Fnatic, he picked Sion.
I think so. I'm not sure.
But most games he picked a carry and had a lot of resources. So I wanted to watch him playing in a different role, because I think he only proved that can play one role, which is carry.
Yeah, like for example, like his game on Camille was really good, right? Like
I think it's great on carries, but I would like to see more of him. So I hope he stays in LEC for next year, and shows that he can play a lot more things.
Yeah. So and I also think after consideration, like someone like Cabochard, although I do like that he explores a bit more with the top lane meta, I would say. Like, he was, I think, the first to pull out the Sion in the top lane, and it's a champion he is more comfortable with, but like can't really make a case for him being top lane of the split. And Odo Amna, even though in the final weeks he started carrying along, with Schalke 04, and I would say that in some matches of Schalke 04 in the early part, even though Schalke lost, he was one of the better players on that team. It was difficult to say that like he was just not making that impact that you want from somebody in the top lane. So who did you vote for number 3 in the top lane?
For me, the number 3 is Wonder. Although I don't think that this was one of the best splits for him. I think he stepped up a bit. He played. He always play a lot of things, which is something that I really, really take in consideration. But I don't see a split or a votation where I can put Wonder second or first. Maybe another split, yes, but I don't think that this split was his best. But although I don't see that nobody was better than him to put in third position. Maybe at the beginning of the split, everyone could thought about Fing, but I don't think that Fing had that better split. Don't think that Finn is one of the key parts of Rock succeed. At least on this split, he was correct, but he wasn't shining particularly.
Yeah.
So for me, it's Wonder, because I don't think there is nothing better right now.
Yeah. So I agree with that, right? So like, for example, Finn had a few games when I thought like, okay, he's stepping up. You know, I remember one game on the Gangplank where I was like, okay, because I talked to him early in the split, and I asked him, okay, so where do you need to improve, right? And he said like, you know, for example, a champion like Gangplank, he played 70 like solo queue Gangplank games to try to improve, and I started seeing that pay off. But I would agree that if in terms of consistent impact as a top laner, like he just doesn't make the cut. And Janox, even though in the early split especially, I think he played very well, and I was like, okay, wow, this guy is stepping up. I would say the same for him. I also have Wunder as third. I agree with you very much that this wasn't the most impactful split for him, but you know, all the teams in the LEC were basically like into games and like faltering. But throughout the entire split, I think he remained a level of consistency on a level that would warrant him as third. Then second, I had Orome, and
I also had Orome.
Yeah, I just think that we talked about him a bit earlier, right? He stepped up definitely compared to Spring Split, but also even in the games where he didn't carry, like on the Jux or the Renekton we mentioned earlier, he was still a consistent factor, right? He was not inting in any way. He was there for the team fights, did exactly what his team needed him to do. And he could have been a player, you know, because I remember early in the split, people were wondering, is Orome really fit for Mad Lions? Should Mad Lions want Orome? Is he not holding the team back? And I was a bit surprised by it, but because while indeed he didn't have the flashy plays, it's literally the meta to have like an Ornn in the top lane and sit and farm and upgrade your team items, and you know that's what the top lane was supposed to do, right? In that meta. So, but when he got the chance, he definitely did step up, and I definitely think he's worthy of the second place.
Also, it's a little bit hilarious for me because a lot of people say, especially now he's in the LEC. A lot of people didn't knew him before going to the LEC. But here in Spain, when he played in many teams, for example, Kiev, he played a lot of carries. He played Vladimir, Camille, Renekton, all the games, and a lot of people have the things that he's a weak side player or a tank player all the games.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that this split he proved that he can play carries and he can carry with these aggressive champions.
Yeah, he can hold up, right? Yeah. So I definitely do hope that in like a future meta he gets more chances to shine because I don't know, it's a bit dull obviously. Like top lane already is a bit of a lonely kingdom, you know, where you just sit there and just do nothing. So yeah, I do hope for him as well that that meta comes around where he can prove that he's a real carry. And finally, we both said Alphari number one. It's really weird to have a 10th place team member as the number one, but it's just, the guy has so much impact, and you can just see, if you just look at how he approaches the game, you see him walk around and go for dives and getting kills where nobody else would consider it, right? He knows exactly what to do. This guy is incredibly skilled. You want to add something?
Also, Alphari is a player that wins all the matchups without taking care of the champions. For me, that's incredible.
Remember the Kennen Malphite? I think
Kennen
it was.
Malphite.
Kennen like
Malphite.
one week he was on Kennen and destroyed the Malphite, and he said, Kennen is favorite in this matchup. And then he was the Malphite playing against the Kennen, and he won that, and he said, Malphite wins this matchup. And it's just him winning, right?
It's like Kennen versus Malphite, who wins? And Alphari says, me.
Yeah, exactly.
Without taking care of the champion. I think the next day or the next week, he played the matchup with the Kennen, and he stomped the Malphite. So that's for me, that's incredible. And I think it's the only player in the European top lane that can do that.
Yeah, I think he's definitely the best top laner in the West. And he is definitely in contention for best top laner in the world. Now, obviously, you have these insane players like the Shaya, Nuguri, and I was hoping so much.
369.
Yeah. So it's like I want to see him face off against these players once. That to see how high up the rank are these players really, because he is insane. So yeah, that is the top lane, and then we move to the jungle. Where the eligible nominees, and I'll read them out loud, are Kadril, Gilius, Inspired, Jankos, Lurox, NG, Razork, Selfmade, Shadow, Skeens, Trick, and Xerxes. So for both Shulkin, Fear, and Vitality, there are 2 nominees because they substituted. Lurox got substituted by Gilius, obviously, and NG was substituted by Skeens a bit later in the split. So... Any names that you crossed off immediately from the list?
Yeah, I think so. Mostly every name, because I think the level of the jungler is quite low right now in Europe.
Yep.
Razork for me was a bit disappointing. I expected more than by him, taking care that he won the Rookie of the Split.
Yeah,
with
exactly right. Yeah.
Nice performance in a split, in the spring split. So Razork was not in my list. Also, I think Trick played well, a lot of games, but I didn't like him in others. So I don't think he's a top 3 junglers. Inspired for me could be in the list. I didn't pick him. I picked Gilius over him. Then I will tell why. But definitely, Inspired is a fair vote for me in a second or in a third spot. I think the number 1 is very clear for me. It's a big difference between
we'll
the
get
first
those,
one.
Yeah, we'll get to this exact list. But yeah, for me, it was like when I was crossing off the list, and cutting them down to 50%. I cut off Xerxes, Razork. I cut off NG, Kadril, Trick, and Lurox. Those are the people I crossed off immediately. And
Xerxes was so disappointed this split.
Yeah, it was very disappointing, and I agree, especially with your comments on Razork, that this guy was Rookie of the Split, and I think just Misfits as a whole was incredibly disappointing this summer split. So maybe he was affected by that as well. But we know that he has talent, but he just wasn't making it through. And then actually, I want to talk to you about Jankos for a brief while, because I think Jankos was my next one to cross off the list, because I was not impressed at all by him this split. I think it was very disappointing, and one of the big factors holding G2 back, actually.
Yeah, and also I remember the first half of the split with that LEC games that was so disappointed. Jankos, I think, was the MVP for last split.
Yep.
So I think I expected a lot more, obviously from G2, but from Jankos especially. And I don't think he's a top 3 jungler right now in the regular season. I think G2 ended the split kind of nice, but I hope that he step up in playoffs. But we can take that in consideration for the votes. So for me, it's not a top 3 jungler right now.
Yeah, and we when we talk about G2, also have to talk about Fnatic, because Fnatic obviously also had a disappointing split, and we'd already said earlier that people have a bit of recency bias, so they will look at the last few weeks, and that will be on people's minds more. Makes sense, obviously, but Selfmade in the first half of the summer split, he was the only player on Fnatic who was consistently playing well, and sometimes Reckless would help him and would step up as well. But if you look at his consistency in the first 4 weeks, it is Selfmade who was high up that list, and that's why I didn't cross him off immediately, because for half a split he played very well.
See, I take him in high consideration because of that. I think it's a big part of the Fnatic playoffs and what saved the Fnatic split.
Yeah.
I think he kind of won some games along with that carries in the jungle. Although I think his second half of the split was not that good.
No, it was pretty, like, especially the final weeks were really bad for me.
Yeah. I have to take him in huge consideration because I think it was key for the Fnatic split. So for me, it's in my list.
Yeah. So and also I brief mention of actually Skeens. I think he was subbed in, I think, week 6.
I think week 5 or week 6.
Week 5 or week 6, yeah. Replacing NG.
Right after the week off.
Oh, then it's week 5. Yeah, then it's week 5. Yeah. He came in, and he has been playing incredibly well, I think. But for me, it's just because he didn't make my top 3. And it's, you know, as sad as it is, like the other players that I have in my list just have a consistency level over more weeks, right? So as I said earlier, that definitely is a weighing factor for me. So if Skeens had played more matches in the LEC and played on that same level, he may have all made it on my list. But so number 3 then for me is actually Inspired, because I think
I think it's fair.
Yeah, so I think he plays more of a supportive role, you know, when it comes to being a jungler. Even though he has quite a, I think Rogue is calling him the First Blood Prince or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Because Jankos is supposed to be the First Blood King, but like he just. I know KDA player is a bit of a meme, right? Because that's what he can play for. But he is high up that list, and it is something that he does well. He has so many assists, and he is so key to setting up kills for his teammates to shine. And I think throughout this split, he did that consistent, and he did that so well that I mean, for me that was just the like why he made the cut, right? He didn't have like, oh wow, it's Inspired doing this, and everybody will obviously remember that he missed a smite on a Dragon Soul and then on the Baron immediately after. Sure, yeah. That's what happens, you know. But throughout the entire split, this guy was the backbone, I would say, of Rogue. He was there, and he literally let the team lean on him and said, like, okay, I need these resources, and Inspired would be like, okay, I'm gonna get you these resources. So that's why he made my list as my number 3. Who was your number 3?
My number 3 is Selmaidman, because I was I didn't have sure if should be Cellmate or Inspired was the 2 names that I had in my mind for the 3rd place. But like I said before, Cellmate was very key for Fnatic, and I think without his performance, especially in the early this split, Fnatic won't be in playoffs, and that will be a disaster for the org. I also think Inspired is a very fair bot, because I think he is the person who set up the, as you said, the kills for the teammates to shine, and especially it's very important for Larsen, who is the player that shines more in Rogue, I think, in my opinion, and in most people's opinion. But so I think Inspired is a perfect complement for him. But for me, it's like the 4th jungler right now in my
and
box.
I can definitely see it, right? As we said there, when we headed into the jungle discussion, it's like there are a few junglers that you can definitely consider here, right? But there's one, and I agree with you, there's one clear favorite. But I think maybe some people will be surprised, because I think you and I have the same top 2. I'm not sure. But
I'm pretty sure that.
Yeah. So my number 2 is actually Gilius. And for people who watch the final weeks, they'll be like, but why? It's God Gilius, right? But remember, when he came in week 3 and in week 3, while you could see, okay, this guy is bold and he had some good plays on his Lee Sin, he's still inted in that game. And I think in the first 4 matches, he went 1-3 or something with his team, right? And while his play was okay, I wouldn't at all say it was the high level jungle play that I would say I would want in a number one jungler in this split. How do you look at Gilius this split?
I remember when we talk in our show about Gilius in the spring split, we said like, okay, why is this guy on LEC? When all the Forgiven discussion and drama and all the things, I said, okay, Forgiven was bad, but Gilius also was bad, so I don't see why this person is playing on LEC. But he came in week 3, I think, because Lurox had some health issues.
Yeah, he was sick. Yeah. Couldn't practice, so they brought in Gilius overnight to Berlin, literally, and he played with the team.
And he surprised me a lot, and I think also he was a huge part of the Schalke miracle run.
Oh yeah.
So I had to recognize that Schalke miracle run in my votes, and I did it with Gilius and also in another position that I will reveal later. So I think it's fair to put Gilius here, even that he didn't play the 18 games in the split.
And so just to be clear, right, I still have him as second, so I still think he was an incredible jungler. I'm just trying to explain why I didn't put him first, as many people will think, right? Because when I look at like players in their role, as I said, my first test is the eye test, right? It's like, okay, how good are they in their position? And as I said, in those first few matches, while he was okay, he wasn't on that level yet that he was towards the end of the split. And obviously, especially in week 6, 7, and 8, this guy was, I would say in 6, 7, and 8, he was the number one jungler in the LEC. He played not only the Lee Sin, but he was good on Kha'Zix, you know. He played Sejuani even well. He had a big impact on that as well. I think it was in the final week when he had the Sejuani game as well. So that's why I still put him as second, but not as first. It's because of those first few weeks, but undeniably towards the end of the split. Incredible jungle play. And I don't know what happened to him, because as I agree with you, in the spring split, it was like, what's happening with this team? Probably because the team dynamics in Schalke 04 were just a bit bad, you know, with the loss streak and all the Forgiven drama happening. And maybe, you know, that was something that affected the team as well. But yeah, undeniably, and as you said, and as well as I will talk about more as well when we get to a later category in this in this talk, the key factor in Schalke 04's miracle run, because it was literally him stepping up his game and the rest following suit. But then we get to the number one juggler in this split, and go ahead.
Very clear for me.
Go ahead.
For me, it's very clear, and it's that the reason because I don't actually understand the people saying that Gilius is not even the first one number one jungler, but also the MVP. For me, the difference between the first jungler, which for me is Shadow, and the second is very, very, very high. Shadow was very, very consistent during the split. He proved that even his leasing is the best in Europe and one of the best that I'm seeing right now in the big leagues. He also proved that can play another champions, and for me it's not the most key part of the Mad Lions team, but definitely one of the most important factors of the success of the Mad Lions. So for me it's very clear, the first one, and the better jungler right now in Europe is Shadow.
Yeah, I also have Shadow, and that is, as I said earlier, right? I rate people who are consistent at a high level higher than people who are the best for a smaller amount of time. So I would say that in my consideration, looking over my notes, I would put in the first half of the split, I maybe would put even Selfmade a bit higher than Shadow. But like especially in certain weeks, but for me, throughout this entire split, Shadow has been at least the second best jungler in any given week, given his role in the team. Like, at least he would grab that silver medal. Maybe sometimes it'd be like, okay, maybe third, but he was always up there, right? And doing that for 8 weeks straight having that impact. And obviously we all remember like crazy outplays when he landed the ultimate on Perks by lifting off Jankos and kicking. You know, that's all amazing and well. But you have to consider that this guy, throughout these 8 weeks, had consistent impact on the team, was key in team fights, especially when he would land picks or he would, navigate how the team fight was going, staying alive long enough for its teammates to arrive, dancing around opponents. I think in general, Shadow has shown amazing level of play and also a big step up. Well, maybe not as big as, some other players in the other categories compared to the spring split performance, but like Shadow's growth continued in this split, right? You could see that this guy is not on his top level even yet. This guy can still improve, and yeah, I definitely think he deserves that number 1 spot. Yeah,
same for me.
Right, then we get to the mid lane. And, oh boy, the mid lane.
Spicy.
The mid lane is spicy, so let me go over the eligible nominees again. Abedage, Caps, Febiven, Humanoid, Larsen, Militia, Nemesis, Nuke Duck Special, and Zazie. So, who did you cross off your list first? Let me look at my list again.
Okay, Nemesis.
Yes.
I think he had a horrible split with Fnatic.
Yep.
Also, Nuke Duck had a horrible split with Origin. Special, for me, is one of the worst mid laners and probably the worst rookie this split.
Yep.
Sassy, I think is good. Is super talented, but don't think it's yet on the level of the top mid laners. Same for Milika. I really like Febiven, but don't think it's on the top 3. So for me, it's basically that. And also Abedage, I think he stepped up a lot these last weeks, but I didn't like him on the split.
Yeah, so I agree. Like I also crossed off Nemesis, Nuke Duck, Febiven, Militia, and Special immediately. Then I think Zazie, while I think he didn't really get a chance to shine a lot, as in he would often take on a more supportive role as a mid laner, right? Like SK Gaming obviously puts everything on Crown Shot, rightfully so, because that guy's insane. But because Zazie mostly had to back him up and set up things for other players to help us also. I don't think he got that much of a chance to shine. As for Abedage, I think in the final weeks, this guy was absolutely nuts, right? It was like
a monster.
At least on the same tier as Larsen. He played well on Akali, he played well on Zoe. It was nuts. It was Corki as well, indeed. But that's like the final 6 games maybe, or something like that, right?
2-3 weeks.
Before that, he was the 9th mid laner in the LEC. He like
8th, 9th,
9th, something like that. He was
I agree.
down there. It literally happened for him. Like one match he was shit, the next match he was insane. I don't know what happened to him, because but like yeah, definitely for the majority of the split he was not good at all, and in the final weeks he was incredibly good. So I didn't count him out immediately because obviously he was a great mid laner towards the end. But when I look at consistency, if you take the average, he would be like a middle tier mid laner, right? It's like if you take the average now, but obviously super excited to see how he has upgraded his play in the final weeks, and I hope he carries this on, because everybody is always saying about Abedage, this guy in scrims, he's an absolute beast, he's a monster, and he does things that would qualify him as one of the best mid laners in Europe. And we didn't see that, and all of a sudden we started seeing the Abedage who plays in scrims apparently. So I hope he keeps that up, and I hope if we get back to a stage ever again, then then he can play like that as well. So yeah, and then I guess for me, the number 3 I put. Hang on, just to double check. Yeah, I put Humanoid as my number 3.
Yeah, same for me. Yeah. I also put Humanoid.
Yeah, I think again for me it's a lot with the recency bias thing, because towards the final weeks maybe he wasn't as important, but for the first 3 weeks in Mad Lions, and for the first, I think all the way until the final match again in the first half against Misfits, which they lost. But during those weeks, this guy was comparable to Larsen, like in his stats.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he had more kill participation. He had more, he was just he had more farm, like that. He was up there. He was. I think there was a segment on the LEC like week 3 or something like that, right? Where they highlighted who were the best performing mid laners. And he was first in like 4 categories, right? So many people may have forgotten about that. But for the first weeks, this guy was insane. And even in the weeks afterwards, maybe not as insane as some other players, like my number 2 and number 1. But he was still consistent and still important in his role.
Yeah, I think Humanoid was very consistent during most part of the split, but the reason why it's not on my top 2 or top 3 is because basically his last 2 or 3 weeks were very, very disappointed. So for me, that's the main reason why it's not on the top 2 or top 1 spot.
Yeah, so you still have him as number 3 then, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I mean, I don't know what to say more about him. I think many people think of, okay, but what can he play besides the mages, right? Like the meta definitely suited him with the Orianna, with the Syndra, but he also played a Galio, and he had a very good game on Galio. He was very impactful on that. So that's a bit of a different role you play in the team with that champion. So I think overall, Humanoids still definitely a great mid laner this split, and I just hope in general for the Mad Lions that they are gonna shake off the rough last few weeks, right, and refocus.
I really hope that the Mad Lions step up and be one of the best teams again, as they were for all the regular season this split.
Yeah. And I think maybe because I think in the playoffs they'll have there's a new patch, so they may have an edge because in the first few weeks of the summer split they experimented with champion picks and stuff like that, and they popularized obviously the Wukong support and stuff like that. So I think maybe in the playoffs they'll have an edge again, but that's a different discussion. Who is your number 2 mid laner of the summer split?
My number 2 mid laner is Caps.
Yeah.
Caps is my number 2 mid laner because I think G2 in general, but also him, even thinking that he was the best in G2, clearly the best on G2 during all the split, I don't think that his first weeks was the best. I think Larsen and Humanoid was better than him, but obviously he stepped up a lot this second half of the split, I will say. So for me, it's also a key part that the G2 made playoffs and look not that weaker. They were looking a lot very, very, very weak. So I think Caps was the big reason why G2 could bounce back to the LEC high standing. So for me, it's clearly top 2, but I don't think he's the MVP or even the first mid laner.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm gonna do a bit of the same as I did with when I talk about Gilius. Like I'm gonna curb the enthusiasm a little bit in the first part because he's also my number 2. But people may ask, okay, so why is he not number 1? Because remember when like the games he had on the Syndra or something like that, right? Or when against, I think it was Misfits, when he destroyed Misfits on that Kokmal mid, right? Sure, he had those games, but you also have to remember that in the opening weekend, Caps wasn't super special at all. He had a Galio match, for example, that was poor. He played Kokmal mid for a second time and had almost no impact on the game. So, there's more factors obviously weighing into that. But when you look at when I reviewed the VODs of those matches and just of some outstanding performance of him as well, I think like overall he definitely absolutely carried G2 in in most of their wins, and also even if they lost, Caps often was one of the best players of the week, right? It was like, even if they lost, you'd be like, yeah, but Caps played phenomenally. It's just that the rest of his team was just eating out of their nose, right? And that's like, I still think that this guy played immensely well, and you saw him do things that you would not see any other mid laner do, but he didn't do it as consistently and as often as my number one. And I guess I'll just go to the number one then, and that's Larssen for me. Undeniably, absolute definition of lane kingdom. Always the highest CS, always gets the kills, huge impact on team fights, and just knows exactly what to do in his role as a mid laner. As that, he didn't do the absolutely nutty stuff maybe that we have seen Caps do a few times in this split, but throughout the entire summer split, this guy has been at least top 2 in the mid lane.
I agree. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And the first one, I think, is very clear, right?
What?
The number one mid laner, I think, is very, very clear.
Yeah, I'm talking about Larssen.
Yeah. Larssen is super, super clear for me. Is the king of the mid lane this split. I think, as we said before, in the first half, I was thinking about who is better right now, Larssen or Humanoid. But for me, the difference was these last weeks, where Larssen proved that he is very consistent and very good during all the split, and Humanoid had a little poor performances. So for me, that was like the tie break and the factor that make me put Larssen first, and I think it's clearly one of the contenders to that MVP. So for me, Larssen is the first one, very clear.
Yeah, obviously, he did get a lot of resources from his team. As I said earlier when we talked about Inspired, he would, I think Inspired said in some interview, or no, I think maybe it was Larssen giving a shout out to Inspired, saying, yeah, he gives me all the jungle camps when I want them and stuff like that. Obviously, he did get help from his team, but if you give resources to a player, it's still up to them to use them well, step up their gameplay, and get to that level, right? So I definitely think that he's very deserving of best mid lane of the split, and I'm just super excited to see him play against at Worlds, because Rogue already is qualified for Worlds. I want to see him against Showmaker. I want to see him against Knights from Top Esports. I want to see him against, and obviously with the Rogue TSM rivalry, I want to see him against Bjergsen.
Well, we have to see if TSM qualify for Worlds, because looks hard.
So yeah, then we go to the bot lane, and this for me, and I know for you as well, was maybe the most difficult category.
I agree.
To narrow it down in, because you could make a good argument for many of these players to be at least in the top 3, right? Maybe you can't say for everybody that they are the number 1, but you can, I think bot lane is super stacked. So I had difficulty narrowing it down from the start. I'll tell you who I crossed off my list first. It was Kobe. I think Kobe didn't have a good split. I didn't think.
I agree.
I crossed off Perks because I think Perks didn't play well, and I crossed off Neon. Let me go over the eligible nominees quickly. It's Karji, Comp, Crownshot, Hansama, Kobe, Neon, Patrick, Perks, Reckless, and Upset. So Inex is not on there because he only played 3 matches, so that's not enough to be eligible for the vote. So Schalke only had Neon in this category as a nominee, and I crossed him off as well. While I do think he was a good support and he did not hold the team back during their miracle run, I also don't think he stepped up massively or carried the team or something like that. So yeah, I mean we have Reckless, Upset, Karji, Hansama, Comp, Patrick, and Crownshot. Now Upset is again similar to Alfari. Is like, yeah, but they finished 10th. But if you look at at Upset scores, he did play well,
My problem with Upset is I think he's a player that in the important moments or important fights, he's like kinda sorry. He's like kinda KD a player maybe. I think it's a player that fears a lot to die, and I don't like this type of AD carries. I think in the important moments you have to go without any fear. And for example, that's one thing in which I see Hansama better this split, because I also had that perception of him, and I think he improved a lot in that. But of course, I think Upset is a great AD carry, but didn't have the best split. Also, I agree that he was one of the key parts of the of it's not a succeed for Origin, obviously,
right?
But was the main part. Obviously, Alfari also was huge part, but they that two player was for me the main part that made that Origin take that 6 wins. I guess.
Yes.
I believe that is 6 wins.
Yeah, they went 6-12. Yeah.
So I think that's why Origin pick up that victories, but I crossed up Upset of my list.
I agree. He was he also didn't make my top 3, and I agree with you that while his individual stats may look good, right, and as an individual player was good, I still think that in team fights he didn't have that punch you want your AD carry to have, right? He didn't have, he just, how do you say that, when you see a good AD carry and like chunking away at a team, like for example Karzi, like he will jump in a team fight and he will go in there and he will, like, even if he doesn't make the kills, he will take away huge chunks and he isn't afraid to try and win the fight for his team. And I think Upset was more afraid to die and be the inter than he was confident in being the carry. So that's why he didn't make my list either. And actually, let's go over comp quickly. Vitality bot laner, obviously. I was super impressed by his play, actually, especially given Vitality's performance. He didn't make my list, and that's mostly because I think he lacked that same impact you want a real top 3 bot laner to have in the team. But
I also think he had quite bad games.
Yeah.
Some good and some that maybe he could carry but didn't do it.
Yeah, I still think though that the games he didn't look good wasn't necessarily like his fault, but maybe
I can agree.
Because his team didn't approach the fights correctly, and obviously he's a part of the communication, so there's part of the blame is on him there as well. But I think in individual skill, Comp was he's not a bad bot laner, and
no, I think he's super talented.
Yeah, he's not a bad bot laner. I wouldn't put him in the top 3, and I actually think that if in the top 3 he doesn't really fit there, and I have a hard time arguing him making it there. But I also have a very hard time completely dismissing him. Right? It's like I can't just say, oh no, he's not even in consideration. So same thing for Patrick, because this guy is, we talk about Alfari being an elo hell, but I
think Patrick is elo hell too.
Oh my god, because he, on the Kalista or something like that, right? Oh my god.
Kalista, Aphelios,
Ezreal plays well as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, this guy is an insane bot laner, definitely. And actually, for me, probably a top 5 bot laner, but it's so difficult, man. As I said, it's so close and it's so difficult because I think almost all the bot laners this split had games where they were really good and games where they're like and it was so difficult for me to narrow it down. And but Patrick is,
in fact Patrick made my top 3.
Yeah, I mean it's totally a legit vote, right? I'm not upset about anybody picking Patrick. I wouldn't say it's like number 1 or something, but like
no,
it's like still a top 3 bot laner for me. So yeah, let's well, I said it's still top 3. I can see why he is a top 3 bot laner for people. So let's go to the top 3 then. Who's your number 3?
My number 3 is Crownshot. I think Crownshot had some very, very good performances. The main reason why he's not upper in the list is because I think he's kind of depend of some champions. For example, the Ezreal. I think his performance level is higher with the Ezreal rather than other champions. So that's kind of negative for me. But of course, he's a very, very good AD carry and a very important part of the SK Gaming succeed and going into the playoffs. So that's my top 3. Hard for me not to put Karsi in this spot because it's a player that I really, really like and I really admires. But I think his split was a little bit worse than compared to Spring Split, and I think that the Mad Lions bot lane was better because of Kaiser and not because of Karsi. So that's the main reason, because I think it's not a top 3 AD carry this split.
Yeah, I completely agree with this. I have Crownshot in my top 3 as well, but my number 3 is actually Reckless. And I think this is mostly because some people will be like, maybe some people will be like, Reckless should be much higher, and other people maybe remembering, for example, that hilarious moment when he was Kaiser and he walked into the Bard ult, something like that. And be like, why would you? But I still think that you have to acknowledge that in the end, Fnatic did finish 4th. Not with a great split in any way, but they still did finish 4th. And while Selfmade was the carry for Fnatic, like the biggest carry for Fnatic in the first half at least of the summer split, I think Reckless on that team was maybe the most consistent throughout the entire split. That he wasn't like the amazing god bot laner he has the potential of being, and it has been in in the past at moments where you're like, okay, this guy is out of this world, but he was still that consistent factor, like reliably dishing out the damage for his team, being reliable in team fights. And I don't know, it was so difficult for me as well to not put Karji on this list, because he is an incredibly talented player, but he like Reckless just edged it out for me because of the consistent role he played for his team in this split. And he didn't have Hill is saying this split was
horrible.
Yeah, and of course, you have support and you are meant to die a bit more, but this guy has the most deaths of anybody in this split and got, in my opinion, like the lowest return out of like going in. It was very bad, and Reckless had to compensate for that, and I think he did it very well, and that's why he makes my 3rd place. Yeah,
I think that's a completely fair vote.
Yeah. Okay, so who's your number 2?
My number 2 is Patrick. In fact, maybe a little bit surprising for some people, but I had to recognize the effort that he put on try to make Excel into playoffs. I think, as you said before, that he is kind of LOL in that team.
Yeah.
He had I think that he won a lot of games alone for Excel. Don't think Excel is a top tier team. His mid laner for me is one of the worst on the LEC, for example. Tori, I think it was a little bit better than in spring, but is far away from that North Kernel level that we saw with the Splice last year. So I think Patrick was very, very key on most Excel victories. In fact, I talked to Coedral a few weeks ago, and I asked him if he thinks that his team had that Patrick dependence, and he told me that a lot of games especially when they are behind on the goal lead or something like that. Patrick is the most important person in Excel, and I can agree with that. I think Christ is also a carry person, a carry player. But Patrick, for me, it's the most important person on the Excel roster. This split,
by far.
and I had to recognize that, and that's why I put him in a second place.
Yeah, yeah, and as I said, right, the bot lane is incredibly close and super difficult. So I think that that especially when the votes are being will be revealed, and obviously by the time this video comes out, they will already have been revealed, especially for these categories. That there's going to be a lot of discussion on the bot lane, and rightfully so. Like it is difficult, man, and I think Patrick makes a great case for himself. Obviously, Excel does, similar to how Rogue funnels a lot of resources to Larsen, Excel funnels a lot of resources to Patrick. But again, you need somebody who can make it happen, right? And he does. He does make it happen. So I could definitely agree with your vote. He's not in my top 3, but yeah, I can see it coming. My number 2 is Hansama on Rogue.
Okay.
And this is, again, the consistency factor. I think that while Larsen is obviously the superstar on Rogue, it was actually like Rogue's bot lane is really great, and I think combined this split better than, for example, the Mad Lions bot lane. Like Vander and we'll get to the support category later, of course, but Hansama, everybody's gonna remember when he stole the Baron on the Syndra, but you talk about a wide champion pool, right? But he can play Senna, he plays Aphelios, he plays Syndra. Those are like all over the place in terms how you play them, and he wasn't bad. He's never. I don't remember a game, and even when watching the VODs, I was never really like, oh, this guy's inting. He was always a consistent factor. Maybe sometimes you would say like, okay, at times he was maybe the fourth best mid laner or something like that, right? That other bot laner, because others surpassed him. Because as I said, each bot laner in this split you could almost make a case for, but his consistency and the role he played for Rogue, to me, were so important that he would always be there when they wanted to go for a Drake or something like that. He would always make sure that the lane was in a correct state for them to go there. If they were swapping around, remember the crazy lane swap they did against G2. Against G2. That game was not lost because of Hansama at all. It was like a greater team effort, but I think he's absolutely underrated as a bot laner. I think it's probably because all the attention is on Larsen, and maybe Hansama doesn't have that many super flashy plays, but like with his champion pool and the consistent level of play, the role in team fights he plays, I think he is my number 2, and I definitely think he deserves. Even if he's not voted in like any of the all-pro teams, this guy deserves far more recognition that he's getting at the moment.
I can agree with that. He didn't make my top 3, but I think it's for me it's a similar case than that Carthy. I think Vander is the strong part of the bot lane, and what makes that he shines more. I can agree that he's a little bit underrated in most part of the split, because obviously Larsen is the superstar of Rogue. But I definitely can see why it's on your top 3, and for me it's super close. Karsi, Hansama are players that could make the top 3 and would be fair for me.
Yeah, you could make a case for any of these players, right? But let's now get to the number 1 then. Who is your number 1?
My number 1 is Reckless, because I think he was very, very consistent. I'm not a big fan of Reckless, not gonna lie, but I have to recognize that his split was very, very consistent. Probably one of the most consistent players of all roles and all teams. with Larsen and maybe another few players. So for me, it's also a huge part of the Fnatic succeed to make into playoffs. I think he didn't had that bad games individually. I think the games that he had a bad score was because he couldn't simply play the game because of draft or because of whatever. So I think Reckless is now the best AD carry of Europe. It's very close, of course. It's a very stacked role, but for me the number one is Reckless because of the consistent mid lane.
Yeah. I mean, he's in my top 3 as well, right? So like I can definitely see him making that case. And it's an interesting point that you make about what did you say? Like the consistency, especially like individual, that he was never a big problem for Fnatic in their quote unquote success. This split. For me, my number 1 is actually Crownshot, and while he may not have have had as many outstanding like wow moments as other bot laners this split, like for example you could say that of Patrick, right? Patrick had a few moments where like, geez man, this guy is nutty. Crownshot still had a few, obviously, but for me the reason I put Crownshot as my number 1 bot laner of this split is because of the impact he had on his team as well. I agree with what you said earlier about him, that his champion pool is more limited than that of some other bot laners. But to me, when I watch Crownshot play, it feels very similar to when I watch Alphari play, and that when I look at his positioning, the way he goes about team fights, the way he makes his team move across the map and gets them that advantages in those team fights, it is something that reminded me a lot of Alphari when I was watching Crownshot, and I think it was just that gut natural awe, you know, like that eye test when I look at him and when I see him like perform, I'm just like, wow, this guy is just it's just nutty, right? And we've said it before, it's close, but I don't know, like for me, and also he is the reason that SK Gaming is where they are in terms of team play, right? We'll get to like coach of the split as well, because many of the SK Gaming people have praised their coaching staff a lot as well. But in the spring split, it was Crownshot only who was playing well on SK Gaming, right? Now this team is stepping up more with the changes to their roster, but I think that Crownshot even he improved his play from the spring split as well. He didn't. But when in spring split he was the carry on, like let's say level 10 or something, right? I still think that even in this summer split he still was the carry, but he still improved and increased that level, right? He still evolved as a player and was of such big impact for the team that to me he is the bot laner of the split, because I can think of not as many bot laners in this LEC summer split who have had that consistency and have that much of an impact on their team in general. And I hope he opens up his champion pool a bit more, because then he can excel even better. But he is my number 1 for this split.
Totally fair for me.
Yeah, cool. Then let's move to the support player of the split. And let's quickly go over the eligible nominees again. In alphabetical order, these are Destiny, DOS, Dreams, Hylissang, Jack Troll, Kaiser, Labrov, Limit, Mickey X, Torre, and Vander. I don't think it was very difficult for you to narrow down this list.
No. This is hard, like the other carries, but it's hard for just the opposite. The level is super low in the super role, in my opinion. So
I agree.
I think probably one of the position that was easy to pick. There are a lot of fell off of my list immediately. Hylissang. I think Dreams was quite good the last weeks, but it's not a top 3 player for me, so he also fell off.
For me, Dreams is the same thing as Abadage, right? Like in the final weeks he looked good, but before that was like What are you doing? Yeah.
Destiny play a few weeks, but I still think that he was better than Jack Troll, so Jack Troll also fell off of my list. Limit step up compared to Spring Split, but for me it's not yet a top 3 player. Torre also fell off of my list. Lavrov was in consideration, highly consideration, because I think it's one of the more surprised, one of the players that surprised me the most this split. We will talk about him, I think, later in the rookie of the split, but he is not yet in the top 3 for me. And DOS was terrible for me. I didn't like him.
So when I crossed off my list, right, and tried to cut it down by 50%, Hillesang was off there quite quickly. It's disappointing. Like, he had a few moments where you're like, oh wow, nice play, you know. But so
the Blitzcrank play and
the Blitzcrank hook on the trash or something like, you know, that's something. He had a very good Blitzcrank game. Wow, amazing. But
wow.
I mean, it was a good game, right? But then you look at the rest of the split, and this guy just had no impact. And if he had any impact, it was mostly negative. So yeah, and then Destiny and Jack Troll. I agree with you that Jack Troll had his first weekend of playing Origin, played very good, and after that he was inting. He was standing by. He was literally like Ezra Khan. He was supposed to initiate. Like, remember, I think it was at the red side blue buff. He was standing Ezra Khan in a bush, and his entire team was walking up to the enemy team who were right next to that bush. All he had to do was like knock them up or something, initiate a team fight, and his team could have jumped in and killed them. And he just did nothing. Right? I'm not sure what the communication was of Origin, right? I'm not sure if it was his call to make or not. But yeah, I mean, he had one good weekend and after that fell off. Destiny, just, you know, I love Destiny, right? He's an amazing guy and he's so super positive, but his play was just unimpactful. DOS and Danik, DOS was absolutely terrible when it comes to team fights. They like Misfit said, they picked him for the for the laning phase because he has a stronger laning phase. I mean, it didn't really stand out to me specifically or something like that, but I'll take their word for it. That's why they picked him. But like team fights, he would overstep. He would be the one to overstep so many times. He would cast ultimates like where you're like, what are you doing? Why are you using your ultimate here? So yeah, I do hope for him, obviously, as a player, that he finds a moment to live up to that potential. But it was definitely not this split. Then Torre, not a standout, right? And Dreams, we discussed before. Limit, I think, was not on my first cross-offs, but that's mostly because I think he supported Crownshot very well. I think he did his job there very well. He was not like somebody holding Crownshot back or anything. He was actually the one helping him a lot. So that's why when I was crossing off list, he didn't go off immediately. But he's not in my top 3. Labrov, I still think like his Bard play, I think is I remember his Bard play. He had an incredible game on the Bard, and I think that's really. I hope he can play more of those. Maybe more carry champions, right? Support carry champions as well, because I think that he has a lot of potential there. But I think he didn't get as many chances to shine. And that's obviously also his team's fault if they don't set it up well for him to shine. But undeniably, he's actually my 4th player for this split. I would put him there, but not quite in the top 3. Then, so who was your number 3 in the support category?
My number 3 in the support category was Mikey X.
Yeah, same.
It's in my top 3 and not higher because I think I expected a lot more of him, especially the first half of the split. But like we talked before, every single member of G2, maybe except Caps, played super poorly the first half of the split, and that was the main reason because G2 was very low on the standings. But I think he stepped up a bit these last weeks. especially with the Nautilus. He had some amazing games.
Yeah.
And that's the
had
reason.
One game where he was absolutely horrible on the Nautilus in the last few weeks, but in other games
I agree.
Yeah.
And that's why it's my top 3, basically.
Yeah, it was actually very difficult for me. I think there's a clear top 2 for me, and then it gets more difficult to choose. I would still, I think the top 2 of this split was like up here, like an S tier, and then you had maybe Mickey and Labrov in a low A tier when it comes to this play. To the support play, but yeah, he's also my number 3. I think when I looked through the VODs, I was actually surprised by how decent he was playing. It didn't really stand out to me when I was watching the matches live, or when I was like recapping the matches specifically. But when I watched the VODs again, I was like, okay, yeah, as you said, not like every team, and also on G2, the players had games where they were very bad. But throughout this split, I would say still that consistent play, not the best support player by any means, and definitely has a lot to improve on, especially if he wants to compete at the world stage, right? That's something where his level of play in general this split would just not be up to par and not be good enough. But you also have to remember, he was put on Tom Kench, and he was put on like Braum or some stuff like that, I think like he got a lot of those champions where it was like protect the AD carry, and didn't really have that chance to make standout plays. But I wouldn't say he was doing a bad job either as a support. And yeah, as I said, I was surprised by his consistency this play. Still, you can see that potential of the old G2 in him as well. So yeah, he makes my number 3 as well. Who's your number 2?
My number 2 is Vander.
Vander.
I think Vander is one of the most underrated player in the league right now. For me, it's the better part of the Rock bot lane, and the player that with Inspire maybe that enable his team to shine, and what makes Rogue basically a good team, and a team that won the regular season. So I think Vander deserves way more recognition. And if you stop a minute and take care of his performances, and you watch his games again, I think everyone can see that he's very, very important to Rogue, and that's why it's my second pick. It's not the first because we have a new monster in the town, but I think it's a solid top 2, Vander.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It needed to be pointed out to me. I'll be happy to admit that in the first weeks I wasn't really focused on him a lot. But somebody told me like look at Vander, and then I started paying attention to his games, and it's like his positioning, his engages. They're all so on point, and I cannot remember him making any big mistake this split. I cannot remember him like for example overstepping or engaging where he shouldn't have, and that's not to say that he played safe. He just knows exactly when to do it, right? He knows exactly, okay, we are this far up in the lane and we have our jungler coming in, so now I can go in. And other times he'll be like, okay, this is not favorable for us, so I'm gonna hold off for now. He also protected Hansama a lot. He roamed well. And I definitely agree with you with the fact that he's an underrated player. I think he should be getting a lot more praise. And I do think, and I hope, by the time these votes are revealed, this video comes out, the votes are revealed. So I do hope that people will acknowledge his performance, and I do think so, because I think the LEC broadcast did a very good job of highlighting him as a support player. They did definitely, but he did it himself as well, right? Like we talked about, you mentioned Mickey on the Nautilus, like Vander's Nautilus is Mickey on steroids. It's like his hooks, his engages, like protecting the tank with exactly the right amount of health left to be able to walk away. I don't know. he is such a surprise to me, especially compared to the spring split, because I think in general Rogue in the spring split was pretty underwhelming. At moments you could see that they were playing well, and I definitely think that at moments like that you like I don't know, like this could be a top team, but they had many games where they didn't click, and this split they clicked a lot, and this gave Vander a chance to be such a consistent factor for this team. I like, what do you think of his champion pool? Like, obviously the support champion pool this split was not super large, but
I think he can play mostly all the champions in the meta and all the profiles. He can play Engage, he can play Ardent. I think he can play a little bit of everything. And of course, I think you said it very well. He knows when he can engage and when he can't. And I think this is what makes the big difference between Bander, for example, and Haile Sang, which is a player that, as you said before with the Nautilus, is mostly all the time on steroids. He plays like super accelerated, engaging all the time when he shouldn't. And Bander is a player that really knows when he can do it, what he can do, he can't, and I think that's very important as a support, and what makes him that good.
Yeah, I'll wholeheartedly agree. So then we get to the number one for us both, I suppose, and it's the mid split MVP as well, as nominated by the LEC talent. It's Kaiser.
Yeah, of course. Of course, it's Kaiser.
Yeah, unbelievable how big of an impact this guy has on his team. I remember, so when you I watched Overwatch, competitive Overwatch for a while, and the support role everywhere in any game is always a bit like, oh yeah, but you know, you're the support. It's like, what are you gonna do?
You shield, you
yeah. So and but they're like the first player to like, how do you say it, to open up that the eyes and be like, okay, support players
I am the carry.
Yeah, I am the carry. There was something like, I don't know if you've watched Overwatch, but it's like you had Ryu Jae-hong, and he was such an amazing, like, for example, he was the Ana, like his Ana was amazing. He had amazing Ana play. And I'm actually trying to look up. There's another player who is an incredible Zenyatta, for example. I'm not sure what his name was. I'm trying to look it up now. But like, the same thing happened to me with Kaiser. He was so incredibly good on a support player that it just opened your eyes, like for me, and be like, wow, you can, as a support, absolutely stand out and carry. You don't have to be this healing this healing slave or whatever, you don't have to be this meat shield as a tank. You can actually step up, and that is with he did that with the Wukong, for example, which is obviously the most notorious thing when people started saying he can play top lane Wukong better than most top laners can. And I definitely think it's true, but he also, on other champions, he excelled. So like, yeah, I don't know, man. When I watch that guy play as a support, it makes me ashamed of how bad I am as a support player. Like it's crazy. What do you think about Kaiser?
In my opinion, Kaiser is probably a person that is redefining how the support role can be, or what you can do being a support.
Yeah. Exactly.
The weird part of Kaiser is a player that we see him on traditional supports few times. He most of the time he plays the Wukong, he plays Pantheon, he plays this kind of champs. The set that you think, okay, this champion is top lane, this champion is jungler, and Kaiser said, this champion is now support.
Yeah,
I can play it support and I can carry with this pick. So I think that's the factor that makes Kaiser such an important player for Mad Lions. he gives a lot of versatility to the Mad Lions squad, and that's why I think it's a strongly player who can get that MVP award.
Yeah, I actually looked up the other player I was thinking about for like Overwatch just briefly. It was Jonak, who is like on a Zenyatta. If you've played Jonak, for people who play Jonak, like Zenyatta, like can do a lot of damage, but usually is very squishy and dies easily. But he had like this incredible performance in a support role and like stood up, and everybody's like, damn, like a support player can actually be the best player on the team and carry, right? And I think Kaiser, man. It's just nutty, right? As you said, like even like Pantheon, and people are like, "What? Yeah, sure. Like Pantheon can be a carry champion, but how are you gonna make this happen as a support player, right?" And then he just made it happen, and yeah, absolutely incredible performance from him. I just, yeah, I don't think even. Would you say that when you have Mickey X in his top shape, do you think he would be able to do the same as Kaiser, or do you think?
It's hard to say, but I don't think that we saw Mickey X with these rare picks. That I think is why is what difference Kaiser from the other supports. Sure, Mickey X is in the top form, is a very, very good player, one of the best support of the world, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like about Kaiser is that he's a very unique player, and I don't think probably no other player could do the same as he do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's just the impact he has on the game is immense, and especially considering he's a support player. All right, then we get to the next category, which is the Rookie of the Split. I don't think we had Rookie of the Split last summer split, but maybe that was because there were so few rookies coming in then. But now we do. And actually, there are 6 nominees only, so that's a smaller category than...
you have to pick 3 out of 6, so it's kind of easy decision.
Yeah, the nominees were DOS, Kreis, Labrov, Milica, NG, and Zazie. And... yeah, because the pool is so small, and we have talked about a few of these nominees before as well, it was not very difficult for me to narrow it down.
Same for me.
Yeah, DOS and NG were the first ones to be crossed off my list, because they.
In fact, they both were bench, so.
Yeah. So
that tell you that didn't have that good performance.
Yeah, and just overall, right? It was just not very good. And then Milica, I think, wasn't while he wasn't like horrible, you know, as you would like, you can argue that DOS and NG were within the spectrum of being a pro player. Like their level was just way subpar. That Milica didn't do many good things either, right? I think in his first matches, I was a bit impressed by him. I think like, okay, you know, this guy has potential, but he definitely fell off towards the end of the split and just didn't make the hype work for me.
He had some very good games. For example, I remember the game against Mad Lions. He absolute carry with that LeBlanc performance.
Yeah.
But I think it was a player that was correct, like an average mid laner. But he was a little dependent of that Azir Corki for me. So that's why I don't think that he's one of the best rookies, even taking care that the pool is very small.
Mm-hmm.
I take him in consideration. I only cross DOS, Special, and NG. So I had that for 4 players.
Special wasn't a nominee because Special has he has played.
Yeah, Special has played.
Yeah.
I'm not sure now.
I think he played.
Yes, I was talking about Sassy. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Sassy was also in consideration for me. Definitely, I think he, as I said before, I think he's very talented. And also you said that he couldn't shine that much because he had a more support profile on SK Gaming. and I can agree with that. And that's why he didn't make into my top 3.
Zazie didn't make it.
No, Zazie didn't make her in my top 3.
So who's your number 3?
My number 3 rookie is Kreis. I think it was a nice incorporation to the top lane pool. Even as I said before, I want to see more of him play in different roles. I think it was very important to Excel to try to achieve that playoffs dream. Of course, Patrick is the superstar there, but Kreis is also very important to the team, and I want to see more of him. So that's why he's my third player.
Yeah, he is also my third, but I would like to reiterate, right? The pool of people we can choose from here is very small, and especially considering that 2 of them can be crossed off immediately because they're not like, I mean, they were just not impactful in any way whatsoever. You have essentially like 4 people you can choose from for your top 3. So it's he is also he's my number 3 actually. I'll talk about my number 2 a bit more extensively when we get to him, but I think Kreis, while I'll put him number 3 and maybe not number 2 for me, was because yes, definitely he has grown a lot, and you can see his performance improve over the course of this split, especially the early weeks. Very shaky, not impactful at all. Played very scared. You know, I would say like he wasn't playing as confidently as he needed to be in team fights and stuff like that, or even in 1v1s against his lane opponents. But towards the end he grew, as you said. His champion pool is what put me on number 3 for him. That he isn't as varied and well versed in when it comes to picking his champions, but still he grew, and towards the end was definitely a reliable factor for XL Esports. So that's why he's my number 3 as well.
By the way, I'm fucking trolling here. I wrote it down special. I don't know why. Sase. In fact, yes, he did into my top 3. I don't know why I wrote the special down in my notes, but I trolled there. Sase did make it into my list.
Okay. So he's my number 2, Zazie.
Yeah, it's my number 2.
Yeah. I've said it before, but like a bit more supportive role for his team, but still I was very impressed with how well he managed to do that. Like, it's very difficult to like quantify support players' performances, right? Because or people who play a supportive role. For example, when you look at Inspired, who has a more supportive role as a jungler, it's really difficult to quantify why he does it so well, I think, because it's more of a passive approach to the game. But even in games where Zazie was meant to dish out more damage, I think he did that well. I also think that like he was, okay. So Genox in the top lane would be my second, like, I suppose, best player on SK Gaming, because I think he did it very well in the top lane. But like I think Zazie definitely. I was surprised by how good he was for a rookie and how well he fit into the team and how well he played his role. I wouldn't even say that he has grown a lot over the course of the split. I think he just remained a consistent level of play overall.
Yeah, I agree.
Some outliers upwards, some outliers down. But as a rookie, I think this is definitely, you can see this is LEC material, right? Like, he has the potential. Maybe will never not be on that Caps level, and obviously Caps is an absolute monster, or Larsen, but definitely good for the LEC and worthy of being acknowledged as a surprise good rookie, I would say. Yeah.
So who's your number 1? I think
it's Lavrov. We have only Lavrov left. So
of course, it's Lavrov.
Yeah. Incredible support player. Was very hyped before coming into the summer split, actually. Many people were very excited about him.
It was a player that, like, the last 2 or 3 splits was always a player that most people say this guy should be on LEC. This guy should be on LEC, and we finally have it. And I don't think he disappoint anybody.
No, I agree. I think he definitely it's simple, right? He stepped up when he needed to for his team as a support player, and I was just super satisfied with his performance. I would say again, as I said earlier when we talk about Vitality, I think he didn't get as many chances to shine with his team, which maybe held him back as well in his performances. But you can see that this guy is at least has that potential of becoming a top a real true top support player, like for example a Vander, right? That's definitely within the capability of Labrov. So yeah, super rookie of the split for me is definitely Labrov. Again, I'm not I don't want to say I don't agree with this category, but it's like this category doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to have. Like for example, in the spring split, you had so many rookies coming in, right? It was like, okay, in a new season as well, so we definitely need to see. But for this split, I don't know. The pool was small to begin with, so I'm not a big fan of having this category this time around. But now it's there. At least give Labrov the acknowledgement, I suppose. So then we move on to the coach of the split. Now, before we get into discussing the coaches, let's define what is the coach of the split, because it's very difficult and it's a bit of a
it's hard.
It's a controversial category as well, with many people saying, yeah, but you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So, and that is fair. So when I look at coach of the split as a category, I definitely take into consideration the person and knowing that they are the coach of the team, right? When I vote for them. But it is a coaching staff. Like, for example, let's compare it to like a ship, right? You have the crew working on the ship. Those are like the analysts, like the scouts, the psychologists and stuff like that, right? And then you have the coach is like the captain of the ship to me. And when I vote for coach of the split, I just look at basically where that ship has sailed with the team, and if that's up to what I expected from them, or if it exceeded those expectations. And then in some cases, obviously, you have to look at if players, for example, all say, okay, the coach really helped me a lot, and that team did exceed those expectations, then it's like, okay, but if all the players are saying that it's the coaching staff that helped them a lot, and this team did better than everybody expected, then they deserve it. But overall, when I look at coaching, like coach of the split, I try to think more of coaching staff, because coach is such a vague term, and you need to define how this team improves based on like what they do with coaching staff, right? For example, they can have amazing analysts, right? For if you know exactly how to draft, that's all analysts' work, and coaches are there to put it all together and guide the players towards that goal. So yeah, let's just do you have any specific thoughts on defining coach of the split?
No, I agree. I can agree with you. I think it's a hard category to say, and even it's called coach of the split. For me, it's like taking all the team and seeing okay, this team step up, this team overperform. That's mostly what I'm voting in this category.
Right. Yeah. So let's go to the coaches then. The eligible nominees, let me pull them up right here. Were Jandro from Misfits, Duke from Vitality, Dylan Falco from Schalke 04, Freddy from Rogue, Grabs from G2, Giotto from Origin, Jesse's from SK Gaming, Mac from Mad Lions, Mithy for Fnatic, and Youngbuck for XL Esports. So who were the first ones to be crossed off your list?
Giotto is crossed off of my list immediately. Also, Jandro, who is a person that I really love. He's my my colleague from Spain, but Misfits was a huge disappointment this split, so he fell off of my list. Duke fell off of my list, although if Vitality made playoffs, I think should be a person to take in consideration for the top three. And also Mithi didn't went into my top three, and even I don't think in my top five even.
Yeah, no, I agree. So for me, it's very important when you look at these teams that have faltered, right? And also in the team succeeding, as I'll get to my list later, like a good coach can get a team together, right? A good coach can play this role of, okay, we have all these loose parts, and now we're gonna use it to build a house, right? And now we're gonna have a team. And when you look at Giotto, that has obviously miserably failed. Same thing for Jandro with Misfits, where you had all these loose parts where individual players, you'd be like, okay, this team should be in the playoffs. Absolutely failed. Mithi, same thing. Even though Fnatic made it to the playoffs and ended 4th, I think, as we've heard from Fnatic, that Mithi plays more of a role as a coach, is like a 6th player. He's like trying to be more of a, making sure that the players stay within the boundaries of what's reasonable. But Fnatic this split needed a coach that pulled the team together, that made Fnatic a team. And I still think they are not a team. They are still this squad of individuals who can play League of Legends at a very high level. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And I think, I obviously don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but I spoke to Whippo in a very personal interview when he talked about what the dynamics were on Fnatic, and it was just not good, right? This was not a team, and that I think that it would really have benefited Fnatic if they had come together and stepped, like had this person be like, okay, let's sort our individual shit out. Like if we are fights among each other, we're gonna get that out now. And we're gonna come together and play as the Fnatic that we are, and that just didn't happen. So that's why why Mithi didn't make my list. Duke, I think, same. Like when if they made playoffs, maybe it would be in consideration. But because especially in the final weeks, I think Vitality did better. But overall in the split, it was just pretty poor. And Grabs also didn't make my top 5. He was one of my first ones to go. I understand, and I have a lot of respect for Grabs, that the circumstances were incredibly difficult for G2 with Perks' dad passing away, obviously. And it's hard for me to be really harsh and criticize Grabs for not pulling the team together when the circumstances are this difficult. But I mean, just in terms of G2's performance, I can't say that I can consider him as a top 3 for this split. Do you have any specific thoughts on Grabs, actually? Is he in your top 3 or not?
No, Grabs didn't make my top 3 because I think even that G2 step up in the last weeks, I think the split was very hard. Also taking care of the circumstances of Perks, but I don't think Grabs should be in the top 3, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think one who didn't make both our lists is Youngbuck. I don't think you have him in your top 3, do you?
No, he didn't make my. Yeah, but I had him in consideration. I think it's
same.
Like the same of Duke. Maybe if Excel was in playoffs, he could be there. Same for. It's kind of the same for Jesus. He didn't make my top 3. I think it's a completely fair vote, and will be in more in a lot of people list. But he was like the 4th for me. He made into playoffs, but I think SK had very high and low peak performances. So for me, it's a lot about the consistency. So that's the main reason, because he didn't make my top 3.
Yeah, and for me with Youngbuck, like the only reason Excel didn't make it was tiebreakers, right? Like it like they missed out on playoffs on tiebreakers, and they were still very close. And I think in general, in this summer split, you saw a steady line of improvement within Excel. And yeah, that's why he was also in my consideration, but didn't make it to my top 3. So who is your number 3 coach of the split?
My number 3 coach of the split is the Dylan Falco. I had to, as I said before, I put Gilius in the second spot of the junglers, but I also like to recognize the Schalke 04 Miracle Run in a collective way, and I think the better way to do that is putting Dylan in this top 3. I'm really happy that he made into the playoffs and into this miracle run. So my congratulations to him, and I recognize it in this top 3 spot.
Yeah, for me, Dylan Falco is number 4. He didn't make it into my top 3. There's a few reasons, and I'll start with the negative parts again and end with the positive things. First of all, is that I think if you look at the first weeks of this split, it was very bad, and I'm very critical of the, as I said, when I look at coach of the split, I also look more at coaching staff, but with coach as the captain of the ship, so like the point to direct the criticism to, that during 10 weeks of off season, Schalke 04 could not find the best combination in their roster, right? They were approaching this as a 10-man squad where they would try to swap out and swap in, trying to find that best dynamic within their team, with their academy team. So that, they were swapping around with Sir Nukes a lot, and Dreams and Lurks and Gilius and stuff like that, right? Trying to puzzle together what the best formula for their team would be heading into the summer split. And I'm very critical of the fact that over the course of 10 weeks, they did not make this happen. Of course, you're going to have like a little vacation or something like that, right? But after the first week, he made the decision, okay, we're going to swap out the bot lane, right? Where Inex and Nukes were swapped out, and Dreams and Neon came in. And that's, he said, because we need a better laning phase, sure. But then the results still didn't come. And only because of an accident where Lurks got sick was Gilius brought in. And then it had a positive impact. And then they decided to keep him on for the remaining weeks. I'm not sure if Lurks wasn't sick, he would have played that week 3, right? Still would have gone 0-2, like maybe like in the worst case scenario, would have gone 0-2 the weekend, same way that Gilius did. But I'm not sure if then Dylan Falco would have said, okay, but now we're gonna swap in Gilius. I think it's very fair to say that like they may have waited until the small break between week 4 and 5, and then make a decision, okay, we're going to reevaluate and maybe we're going to try to play with Gilius for a while. So for me, like the roster that made Schalke's miracle run happened by accident and not because of like
I can agree with that.
With an active coaching. And that's something I'm very critical of when it comes to the Schalke. I'm like not a fan of the 10-man roster idea at all. But when you go for this and you have such a long off season, I think it's very disappointing that they didn't find this immediately. Now, getting to the positive part, obviously, when he noticed that Gilius was of positive influence, that's where the coaching stuff came together. Okay, we're noticing this works. Let's change how we approach this. In an interview I did with him, he said like, okay, when I noticed this, we just threw everything we thought we were doing out of the window, and we're gonna do something new when it comes to approaching a practice. Approaching our drafts, and that is where I find him incredibly commendable, because as I said, right, even if it was Gilius who stepped up and carried the team with him, right, because of Gilius that Abadaga also started playing well or something like that, even if that's the case, you still need Dylan Falco to be there as the coach, to be there as the one holding everything together, like holding that team together. And I think that's why he is in my top 4. Again, I was very critical of him before, but I have to acknowledge, as you said, what he did do for the team, and that's he barely misses out for me. But yeah, so yeah, my number 3 is actually Jesse's, and it's for the reason that SK Gaming player I've spoken to, they all said, whether it was me asking, hey, how did the coaching staff help you, or just like, how have you grown this split, they all said that Jesse has been of incredible impact to this team, making sure they know exactly what to focus on with their practice, making sure that they're good in their play. And as I said, right, when you are a coach and manage to lift up a team this way, and even though they finished like 5th in this split, the improvement from SK Gaming overall is just so incredible, and like a huge props to the SK coaching staff in general, but especially to Jesse's, because of all the players I've spoken to speak highly of him and say that he has been very impactful for them in their personal growth. So that's why he made my number 3. Yeah,
I can see why you put him in number 3.
Yeah,
and now I think number 2 and number 1 are like, I think we put the same names, but I don't.
In different order.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know if you put in different order. So my top 1 and top 2, well, my top 2 and top 1 are Freddy and Mac in that order.
Mm-hmm. Mine's the other way around, but
the other way around.
Yeah. So let's talk about Mac first then, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The main reason why Mac is my first here is because I think that the Mad Lions guys were way better than Rogue the most part of the split. They were the most dominant team in the LEC for me, and even when they were in a tie in the standings, I always saw Mad Lions as a stronger team.
Mm-hmm. So I think many people did. Yeah, that was the ongoing narrative, right? That people were like, yeah, Rogue is there, but how strong are they really? But
yeah, so that's why I put Mac on the first place. I think if I take all the split, taking all the weeks in count and all the matches, for me, Mad Lions was the most dominant team on the league. So I think it's fair enough to put Mac in the first position. And also, I think Freddy is clearly the first on the second, and same for Mac.
Yeah. So when I think about the coaching staff of Mad Lions, it's been said by many of them before, right, that they have a unique approach to their coaching. They do a lot of meditation. They don't want to give away too much, but everybody, even when I talked to Peter Dunn, he said Mac has this weird, not necessarily weird, but unique way of being involved in coaching the players and making sure that they are in the right mindset. Remember that after the final day of the LEC summer split, when they didn't win and they missed out on being the first place in the split, they had a meeting for 4 hours or something like that, right? It was crazy how long they were making sure that their players are in the right mindset. And I interviewed Kaiser afterwards, and he was completely fine. He was just talking about the split regularly, and that shows to me that this coaching staff is uniquely involved with their players. And as you said, they were very strong again. I do think that towards the end, they had difficulty figuring out what went wrong in their team. So that's why they are my number 2 in the coaching staff. That towards the end, when it started being more rocky, they just had a problem figuring out what went wrong, maybe, and countering that. So that's why they numbered it. But again, incredible split from the Mad Lions, and very impressed. So definitely worthy for top 2, and I can definitely see why you have him as number 1. Now for Freddy, he is my number 1.
Fair.
Yeah. So the reason for this is that I think Rogue. Everybody looks at Schalke and says wow, they have a miracle run and this team really came alive. But look at Rogue and where they were in the spring split, and with the same 5 players where they are now. And to me, that is really I also spoke to Fred directly about this, and I asked him, so what did you do, right? And they just decided to change how they approach their game. And they whereas in the spring split you had these like all these gears, that like sometimes would line up and it would be a well-functioning machine, and other times like it wouldn't work and it would crumble a bit. Like this is now a team. They do everything they do in unison, right? They like when they move across the map, they do so together, and when they I just the coaching stuff, and with Freddy obviously in the lead of that, made Rogue from a 5th place to a 1st place with the exact same players.
Roster.
Yeah. And that to me is such an incredible evolution to see. And maybe that's you could say maybe they just learned how to play online, because in the spring split, actually, when they went on online, I don't think they got a single win anymore. But maybe they've learned how to do so now. But like, to me, that the evolution of Rogue, and also figuring out exactly what roles each player on the team needs to play in order for this team to succeed, and making sure that consistently happens. That's why I put Freddy as number 1. And there's a lot of praise obviously going to Larsen, and Inspired has been a great jungler, and Vander has been an amazing support, but making sure that this team consistently throughout the weeks, even if during the first weeks Mad Lions looked much better, it was still Rogue consistent. They have never dropped below number 2, right? They were always at least the 2nd best team in the league, and when they also had some difficult games towards the end of the split, similar to because Mad Lions also had that, right? But at least Rogue managed to keep their heads cool, right? They lost the first game in the final weekend. Then they played against Mad Lions, and I expected Rogue to be horrible, right? I expected to be like, okay, Mad Lions is easily gonna win this and close out and be the first team. But Rogue played so confidently, and I think that's like the coaching stuff is such an important role there, and definitely a key factor in Rogue going to Worlds this year. So yeah,
I agree.
Cool. Then we get to the final category, the big one.
The
most valuable player of the split. I'm not gonna name the nominees for
every
this one,
player,
because it's literally every player that was eligible in the categories in the that we discussed earlier. But first, what is an MVP to you?
I take in consideration the definition, the most valuable player. It's the player that really makes the difference in a team, which makes the team working together and make all the pieces working and fit well in the team. And also the player who I don't think maybe the best team of the best player of the team most times. So I think there are a lot of people that think the most valuable player or the MVP is like the most with the highest KDA, or the player that make the most flashy plays or something. But for me, it's about being valuable and being consistent. And of course, it's a lot to be the keeper of a team. So that's why my 3 players are this kind of player that makes the difference in their 3 teams.
Yeah, so for me it's similar, right? And like important to highlight, for example, that just because they are the best in their lane, I'm not gonna consider them MVP, right? I would be like, for example, let's say, for example, I don't know, I have an example where Shadow is like, I voted him as best jungler, but I'm not considering him for the MVP. But
same for Alfari, for example.
Yeah, but like Gilius, who's the second best, who I voted second best jungler, I do consider for the MVP highly, and he is. I'll spoil, he is somewhere in my list. But and that is because for me the MVP is the one that lifts up the team to be where they are. You know, it's like, And then you consider, okay, so then I consider at least, okay, so what is the achievement they got, right? So, for example, Patrick could be an MVP nominee for me because he was by far the best player, and I think the results that they got with Excel are mostly because of him. But then I look at where they finished, and I'm like, okay, you know, that's why it falls off for me. And that's maybe a bit harsh because, you know, in the end, it's like that's his team's fault more. But when I look at MVP, I'm like, okay, somebody who can clearly motivate his other team to be better and manages to, like, even if their players, like their other players are playing maybe a bit or even bad, the MVP is somebody who takes the lead in this team and carries, you know, like steps up and is like, okay, guys, we are gonna do this, right? And because of that person's achievement, that the team is where they are, and that the other team members are stepping up as well. That is truly what an MVP means to me. It's like somebody who is maybe like in a way the soul of the team when it comes to their performances, right? So yeah, I actually had like my top 2 was pretty clear actually, but for my number 3,
same for me.
For my number 3, I had 3 considerations, which were Caps, Crownshot, and Kaiser. And as I said, right, I've discussed these players before, but Caps because he was the carry on G2 on many occasions. That's why he's my, you know, like I put him as second on the mid laner of the split, but also that he, like he seemed to be the one that, because he was so consistent, the other players on G2 eventually started leveling up. Then so what are your thoughts on Caps for MVP of the split?
I think most people say that he should be the number 1 MVP. He made it into my top 3, but I don't see him being the most valuable player, because for me it's also about the consistency, and as we discussed before, he was not that good all the split. So for me there are at least 2 players that suit better to this award. So that's why he is my top 3.
Yeah, I also had Crownshot in there because of the reason I said earlier. I think when you look at where a team got this split and who the reason is, that Crownshot and Patrick are maybe a bit comparable there, but I think Crownshot just exceeded that even more, both by play but also by where he managed to get his team through being that leader. So he was also a consideration for me. Didn't make it to my top 3, but Caps and Crownshot both would be in my top 5 if I was able to nominate them. So who is your number 3 then, this split?
My number 3 is Caps.
Yeah. Very reasonable. And any additional thoughts on him? Or
I think I said quite everything about him. I hope he continues with this peak performance that had the last weeks. And I think he even is not the highest mid laner or the best mid laner in my list right now in the regular season. I know, and we all know, that he has the potential to be the best in the region, and also one of the best in the world.
Yeah. So I mostly hope that his other teammates step up and be on their old level, right? But obviously watching Caps go off is insane. It's just there's you know, it's like I don't know which team you support in like the in Spanish football, but it's like watching Messi play. When you watch Caps play, it's like like Messi like walking around dribbling and stuff like that. That's Caps in shape is like that, right? It's just you see him do things that make you scratch your head and make you wonder why you would ever consider playing League of Legends again if there's a god like literally walking on the server somewhere, right? So I would say fair vote. My number 3 was actually Kaiser, because I think, again, as I said, there's very few times when you see a support player be this impactful, be so incredibly good that it lifts up the team, and he had that role for me, where he would be the player in Mad Lions to be so consistently good and be so reliable that even when the weeks were not going as well for the Mad Lions, he would be there and he would have a great performance and trying to keep his team together and getting them that victory. So while Mad Lions' performance at the later stages in the LEC was maybe not as coherent as a team, I think Kaiser did everything he could to be that player, and especially in the first half of the split was just insane and such a key factor for me. So who's your number 2 then?
My number 2 is Larsen here.
Ooh, okay.
He was very highly in my consideration for top 1, but I think there is one player that is for me the definition of the most valuable player in the league, and I think it's what everyone is thinking right now. But Larsen is of course a fair vote for the number 1 spot, and if he makes into the MVP award, big award, the first one, I won't be surprised. And of course, I would say this totally fair.
Mm-hmm.
He's the superstar of Rogue. One of the main reasons why is Rogue first on the standings and qualified to Worlds. And I'm very excited to see more of him, especially in the international stage. As you said before, we against mid laners like Faker, for example, or I don't know, Knight, this kind of mid laners that are top tier international.
Yeah. So I guess we have the vote swapped around here as well.
Yeah.
But Larsen is my number 1, and so Gilius is my number 2, and it is mostly so. It's undeniable, right, that Gilius was the factor that turned the tides for Schalke 04. First, it was him only playing really well. Then Abadage, then Odo Amne stepped up, and the bot lane went along with them. So that's why. And I literally heard this guy. What he did was he took Abadage and said mid and jungle is so important right now. We are gonna do nothing but play duo queue mid jungle, you and I, and that's how he basically unlocked Abadage. And if you look at his early interviews on the broadcast interview as well, he says, I'm gonna do everything I can for us to still make it to the playoffs. And while I think that yes, his play was amazing, right, and especially in the later weeks, as we said earlier, in the early weeks it was not as consistently as high, but it's mostly for me he's this high up the list because he unlocked that potential in his team. He made his team believe that it was actually possible, and he is the reason why they are in the playoffs, and why they went on a 7-game winning streak. So, but for me, he just got there as the second place. And so my first and he's your first place. So what are your thoughts on Gilly? So why did you nominate him as first?
No, my first one in fact is Kaiser.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My first one in fact is Kaiser.
Gillies in there? Okay.
Gillies didn't make into my top 3.
Okay. So let's talk about Gillies then. Yes.
Yeah, I had Gillies in consideration for my top 3. Obviously, he will be top 4. But I think that he was one of the main reasons because Schalke made into playoffs with this miracle run and everything. But as you said before, I think that he went into the team by accident because
of
the
lurks.
Yeah, it isn't his mistake. But I think that Gilius, obviously, I can't avoid the fact that he didn't play the 18 games, which is also not his fault, but I have to take that in consideration. But I think he's a fair player to be in this top 3. But I see that the Schalke succeed is more like a very collective succeed. Also, I think Neon and Dreams was a big part of the Schalke step up. Was not only the Gilius change. Abedage also step up in the and Odoabne in the last weeks, but it's basically taking the fact that I think the bot lane change was really important for the Schalke run this split.
Okay.
That's why I didn't put Gilius, because I don't think, and I will probably never know, if Schalke only put Gilius in and not the bot lane, what would happen?
Right.
And that was the question that made me not putting him on the top 3. But of course, he was on my considerations.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I am a bit surprised, honestly, by this, but I can't fault you for having those reasons, right? As I said, for me, a big factor was seeing where the team ended up because of this player, and to me, it would seem that without Gillies, like Schalke would have never had a chance of making it to the playoffs. So that's why he's high up my list now. Yeah, I mean, you revealed your number 1. That's Kaiser. For the same reasons we mentioned earlier.
Yeah. When I think about the most valuable player, the first player that came into my mind is Kaiser. Just because I think he enable Mad Lions to do what they do and how they play. I think without Kaiser, Mad Lions would be the same. They couldn't be that. They won't have that many styles of playing and the surprise capacity that they have right now with this support. And that's why I put Kaiser in first play, because I think that the Mad Lions team, that is a very succeed team in this, that succeed a lot in this split, won't be the same without this player. So that's why I put him on the first place.
Yeah, I think similar reasoning I have for my MVP of the split, who's Larsen. I think, yes, as I said earlier, Rogue funnels a lot of their resources to Larsen, and that's like allows him to shine. But this guy, like without Larsen, Rogue would be nowhere as close as first place. It took like the coaching staff to bringing this puzzle together, right? But it still relied so heavily on Larsen, and even in defeat, it was Larsen who was consistent. You could always rely on this guy, like winning his lane and doing what he needed to do. And he is, for me, like as I said, for me, the end result in how far they lifted up the team is super important. And that is, to me, Larsen is for me the clear winner there. Like from 5th to 1st, I attributed a lot to the coaching stuff, but without Larsen, Rogue would not in any way have been close to being first, in my opinion. And even though they have, as we said, like also good bot laner and jungle has been stepping up a lot as well. I think just the amount of weeks that Larsen has played so well for Rogue and elevated them to be this contender for number 1 throughout this entire split is what puts him at my number 1. So yeah, but like MVP is so difficult because people have different values, right? Like what is an MVP, and also there are just a few people this split that have been so worthy of being considered for the split in such a close fashion, right? Like I can definitely see why people would vote Gilius as MVP of the split, you know, and the same thing with you as Kaiser. I could definitely see it. So similar to like the bot lane, in the bot lane where it was super close, I think the MVP vote will be very close, and I'm not upset at all if somebody like Gilius or Kaiser wins. I would not be angry at all, but to me, like Larsen just edges it out just by a small margin.
I totally see that, of course.
Yeah. So, man, those were all the categories.
it was a long road.
Yeah, it was a long road. Yeah, but
like 2 hours and
yeah,
10 minutes.
2 hours and 14 minutes and counting now.
Holy shit.
So,
yeah.
But I mean, it's good, right? Like we had because we went over almost all the candidates and all the nominees, and I think that's good, like to put it at least in perspective, because we could like quickly list all the nominees, but at least we are able to provide some in-depth content. So I enjoyed it, but my throat is definitely getting a bit sore, and my room is getting a lot warmer because I have the full sun.
I have to open the window.
Yeah, full sun. So yeah, man. Like, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything on the summer split, or anything like you're looking forward to when this video gets out? Like, we'll probably just be heading into the finals. So, who do you hope to see in the finals this split?
I hope to see maybe a Rogue G2 or a Matthiesen G2. Would be dope. I don't know if Fnatic would step up and go into the finals. Now at the day of today, it's hard to me to say, but I think Mad Lions will be a strong team in the BO5. Same for G2. I do think that they will step up, and also I'm very curious about Schalke 04 in the BO5. I don't know if they can keep this great performance that had in the last weeks. I'm very excited about the LEC playoffs. I think the LEC maybe it's not at the highest level right now, but I think everything is very, very close, and that makes the league a lot of very, very entertainment to watch.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like the finals, I do think that G2 is gonna make it there because they are so strong in the best of 5 setting. Fnatic, I think I'm not sure. So by the time this video comes out, they may already have been knocked out of playoffs, whether that's with or without a Worlds ticket, obviously. But I think there's because the things were so like the matches were so close this split, and because we have so many upsets during the regular split, there's so many finals that I would appreciate. Like I could Mad Lions versus Rogue is like this rivalry during the split for the first place would be nice. Mad Lions G2 obviously looping back to the spring split when Mad Lions upset G2 in the first round of the playoffs. But Schalke 04, like this, can you imagine like them completing the miracle run and being summer champions? That like how crazy amazing. Would that be, right? So like there's so many combinations. I think like SK Gaming and Fnatic are like my least hyped teams, I would say, and that's not because I don't think they could play well, but it's mostly because of the storylines, I suppose, that I'm not too
I can agree.
Excited about them, but still, yeah. So I'm super curious, but yeah, man. Let's round up this video, at least the recording part, and then and then thank you so much for joining me and for the talk, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. Hope we can see a good playoffs run, and let's see who finally wins the title.